right, folks, welcome back to this episode of Firepunk Fridays. We've missed a few weeks due to UCC and UCC prep. Lots of craziness going on, and now we have lots of things to talk about. So I think the only problem we're going to have today is kind of figuring out where to start and how to not just ramble for hours on end. But I'd say let's just get right into it. Ultimately, we had a really good weekend. Weather was fantastic. Turnout was great. From my understanding, we broke a record for tech cards sold for an ODSS race. I don't know. Do you have a final number on that?
We had 167 trucks racing, but then all the guys at double class plus the test and tune took the tech card sold over 200. Greg thought that back in the day at some point had been close to that, but we weren't sure. But it was a really, really good turnout. We've been averaging 110 tech cards on ODSS races, so to have over 200 was definitely a stellar crowd.
Yeah, no, it was awesome. Definitely. I mean, recently that's definitely the biggest in the last couple of years. But really good to see everybody come out and building on this big event at Ultimate Callout Challenge, and just really seems to work out really well. Running the two events, side by side keeps the action packed and all that good stuff. So I don't know. Want to just hop right into Ziegler's truck, or want to talk about some highlights from the weekend?
I'd say kind of going into the weekend. Obviously, Ryan, Milliken, and Derek were just begging us to take a $1,000 bet with them. But to be 100% honest, we felt a little behind the 8-ball on Ziegler's.
A little?
A lot.
I'd say
just because of our test day. We had the first test day that we had was, 2 weeks before the event?
It's been 2 weeks before at Edgewater.
And we had problems with dropping oil pressure in the 60-foot because of where the oil pickup was on the pan. Because we had an AV8 pump, but it was still wet sump, and it was sloshing back. And so we couldn't really even get it to the 1-2 shift point on that test day, so we just focused on 60-foot. We also learned that the Weimer, when it came on, we could not control it. It started knocking the tire off. I could trim fuel back. It would just go to the moon. So we regrouped, scheduled another test day for the following Friday at National Trails, and ordered a 106 G55 Garrett to run as a single. And put it on, and Thursday night they canceled the event because of rain.
Yeah.
So we were scrambling at that point because now we're a week away from UCC. We haven't even got the truck to the 1-2 shift, and we got a bunch of people who want to race us.
We were identical a week away, I think.
Right.
And then,
So we ended up going to Magnolia, about 3 hours from here, and if anybody's been to that track before, it is not like the normal tracks that we race on. It is a homegrown track. It's a great little racetrack, but not really meant for the power that we were putting down. And again, we couldn't get it to the 1-2 shift point without knocking the tires off. So we showed up at UCC with nothing but something that we could launch off of and see what happens.
Yeah. I mean, it took us most of the day, Monday, up there at Magnolia to even get it to the point where we were somewhat satisfied with what it was doing in the 60-foot.
Yeah.
We had never raced on a 106 before. We'd, 98 millimeter on the S10 and done smaller stuff quite a bit. But it wasn't until after the timing system was turned off at Magnolia in the evening that we finally got a hit where it looked like it left good.
Right.
The G-meter looked good and all that stuff. So we kind of felt like, we got it off the line the way we wanted, but had no idea how the rest of the pass was going to go. So really, all in all, second pass at UCC going 499, we were pretty happy with.
Yeah, fuel was still conservative. I kind of had taken the shift points based on what Josh's 486 pass was. I said, I got a close idea of where it should be, and it went right down Broadway and went 499. The second pass, we moved lockup and second and third kit in a little bit. It was on track to run like a 485, and the truck made a hard turn to the left, right in the middle of second gear. I don't know why it did it, but Justin pedaled it. When he pedaled it, it backfired really bad, and that backfire caused all the intake valves to tulip just enough that when we checked valve lash, they were all tight. And number 4 was 20 valve
number
tight?
4 was about 20 valve tight, and then that's where it kind of was like, I don't know. I think we weighed all of our options for a good long while as far as if we were going to race or if we were going to, because Derek putting up that number, that made you second guess about everything that you had, because you're like, let's get out.
We knew Derek had a truck that had a proven 3,000 horsepower, plus, and we didn't know if we were going to be able to catch them on the dyno. And when we're looking at the racetrack, like we ran 499, Derek had run a 473, we're 50 points behind, and we know that if we go out and make a couple more laps on the drag strip and end up backfiring it again and tool up the valves even more, we could snap off a valve because we know the valves are now compromised. And we know that if you break it on the dyno day, we didn't have a spare engine. So you're out of the event, you're a sitting duck. So we decided to take that 50-point trailing lead in points and go into dyno day and bring a hammer. And that's what we did.
I'd say we brought a little bit more than that. Just sledgehammer.
Yeah. I think the way Friday panned out really motivated us. It gave Justin the freedom to tell me to put the tune-up in it. He's like, I don't care. He said, I don't care if the crankshaft's laying on the ground after the run as long as it makes a number. So we put a moon tune in it, and that's what I've been wanting to do in that truck for a long time. I just never quite dared. And we loaded our guns, and it really, really took it. When I saw that truck hunker down on the dyno and launch itself forward, I knew it was going to spit back a big number, because on the chassis dyno, you can always tell by watching the truck how much it actually bites into the rollers. And when that truck went forward 6 inches, everybody knew right away.
Yeah. Well, went forward a lot.
Yeah, and I know, like, when we dynoed it at the shop, I mean, even with what it did here, I felt I had a good bit of confidence going into dyno day. We had Lennon, I know you had done a bunch with, as far as videoing the, switching to a radial tire. I think that in itself played a massive.
Where did that idea come up from?
I think I think we were just talking about it.
I know I talked to Johnny about it. Like, they had messed with it on their truck a little bit and whatever, but I don't remember what was our initial
not having a bead lock. We were wanting a bead lock.
We're like, how do we get a bead lock on?
We had called who did we call?
MacFab.
We called MacFab to see what it would cost to put bead locks on these 22-inch American Forces. And it was like $2,000 a wheel. And so we're like, it's probably not a great idea. But we've been measuring tire to rim slip on our dyno, and we were noticing that even a 1,000 horsepower truck would turn the tire on the rim about 4 inches. So we're like, man, we put a big hit on this. What's going to keep the wheel from spinning on the tire?
Well, just like looking at the whole tread thing, and we've seen a big difference in a new tire versus a well worn out tire. And when we just started looking at the radial, we're like, pretty much we were like, well, why not?
I mean, the S10 went $399 on those wheels and tires. It never wrinkled the sidewall up much. It has a strong sidewall, and so
kept its shape. Yeah.
When we tested it on our dyno, there was about 400 horsepower difference, because in the stabilized time, when I hold the truck on a load, a hard tire starts spinning at around 900 horsepower, and the radial tire didn't start spinning until close to 1,300 horsepower. So I could tell already that the radial tire was going to have more bite to a roller. We decided. I mean, it's a little bit of a gamble because nobody's done it really, and you're going out there and trying it. So we loaded it up, and it worked.
Yeah,
extremely well.
Yep, definitely. I don't know. It's pretty rewarding when everything comes together like that. But talk about the tune-up a little bit. Like how different was the tune-up from what we tried here? I'm sure you gave it some timing from what we had here.
Listen to Ryan. You put a little timing in it. Ryan, you're a dumbass. No, but really, the big flame on our dyno came from, I had to make that big hit on our dyno here, so I knew where the 14 mil pumps maxed out at, because I was wanting to command all the fuel I possibly could to see at what fuel quantity rail pressure actually drops. So when that flame hit at the very end of our dyno run was when rail pressure was dropping off, because I was commanding more fuel than what the two 14 mil pumps would support. Yeah. And after it held 6,000 RPM for 0.3 of a second, the next 0.3 rail pressure dropped about 6,000 PSI. So that gave me the data to know going into dyno day at UCC exactly where I needed to put fuel quantity, and it banged rail perfectly.
Yeah. So pretty much that big flame came from rail pressure dropping.
Rail pressure dropping off, and it makes late fuel.
Right.
And even our nitrous setup, like, when we had, because I mean, the 2 or 3 days leading up to the dyno, we thrashed, to, like, really hard, to say the least. And because, we were at that point to where, there was just a ton of odds and ends to finish up. But got all that done. But the nitrous setup that was in it, like, we had bottles that had 2 or 3 rips on them already, and like I'd warmed them up
at our shop.
And they weren't full. We didn't have that big of jets in it, but like when it hit on our place,
define not big
not
jets.
comparing to what we were expecting to put in it on the dyno UCC. The noises that it made, just to me, I'm like, we got a hot rod.
Everybody that was in our shop was like, damn.
It was.
That's wild.
And it came down to the whole question of, if we take that hit from our dyno and put it on the UCC dyno with the big roller, the heavier roller, and the more load, like, what's it going to do? Is it going to break something? Is it going to spin? How's that going to translate? That's just the things you don't really know for sure. But I think the combination of the radial definitely helped a lot in that. And I'm pretty convinced that you put a regular hard tire on that thing probably wouldn't have hunkered down the way it did.
No, I don't think
it
so.
wouldn't have.
Well, I feel, back in 2018, I pulled that data log back up, and the minute the nitrous hit, the second the nitrous hit, RPMs went to 5,500 and then flat line. Mm-hmm. And knowing what I know now with the data that we have with the Rossler, I feel like in 2018, we went right through the 48RE converter, and we were basically dynoing on fluid coupling. Mm-hmm. And that's why you come up in the 2,300 horsepower range. Yeah, and that's why I think you see so many of those trucks stuck in that mid 2,000 horsepower range, because depending on how the fluid coupling is on your 48, the lockup clutch can't handle that big whack. Because even on Justin's truck on Saturday, the Rossler has 5 lockup clutches, and it's captive clutch where the lockup clutch is separate from the fluid coupling part of the converter, and we slipped that converter with that hit, pretty much 3,100 RPM, all the power came on. The truck went straight to 5,500 RPM, then pulled down to 5,000 RPM, went 1-to-1, then ran out to 5,725 RPM. Yeah. So that probably helped save the block, because if it would have loaded up all that power at 3,500 RPM, made 4,500 foot-pounds, and it either made an even bigger number, or the block would have left the jet.
Because we knew you're playing with fire at that, and that's where there's so many underlying factors that I think a lot of people from, maybe besides the competitors looking in, like, you don't really grasp, like, oh, you put it on the dyno, you strap it down. Like, this is something that we've thought out for, I know I think all of us have for the last 4 or 5 years. Like, how do you put this equation together and just happen to nail it, honestly? Yeah. And we put a nice hefty 700 and some
715 horsepower gap. Yeah. That's the gap that Ryan was wanting to bet on.
But, see, it happened the opposite way. So, it wasn't lower. We were just higher.
I don't know. It's fun to talk a little bit of smack and have a good time on the internet, but I've learned my lesson. It's just better to keep your mouth shut and just to show up and bring the heat and hope that it all works.
It does keep you motivated, though.
It does keep you motivated.
For when you're sitting there at night and you're like, God, do I really want to do this? It's like, no, I don't want to live that one down. So I think that definitely does play a good factor.
It definitely felt like good redemption, because, we felt the pressure of being, behind the 8 ball coming into it. And then drag race day, didn't quite go the way we wanted it. So Friday night definitely felt like we were a little bit behind. And then being able to turn that around on Saturday was
that was the first time we've ever been involved in UCC that we haven't been ahead on drag race day.
Yeah, right.
And so we knew that the dyno scored high. So all the years that Baca and Derek absolutely sucked it up on drag race day and then came right back to the top on dyno day, and we felt a little bit cheated. I got your paper. We always felt that, we could have a truck that's almost a half a second faster than the field, and that points gap wasn't near the value of somebody that put 200 horsepower on you on the dyno.
Yeah, and I think if you look at the overall scoring, the maximum points in the 3 events are relatively equal, but when you look at drag racing day, like it's a lot harder to open up a gap. And you look at the sled pole, everybody on Sunday, this last one,
that makes a good hook is within 15 feet.
Right, everybody's within that same group, so you just don't have the big spread, whereas the dyno has that potential for big spread, hundreds of horsepower versus a couple feet.
But in reality, I mean, it is a big deal. You put 715 horsepower difference. That, it is a big thing. But I think when you combine horsepower plus torque, it makes the number so much bigger that that's where you can gain. When we gained 100 points on dyno day, we went from 50 points behind on Friday night to 50 points ahead. So we gained, there was 100 points increase in the points gap by putting 715 horsepower on the field.
I personally would kind of like to still see the torque number be eliminated from the equation. Right. Mostly because there isn't a live tack pickup. Yeah. And
it's not 100% accurate when you have torque converter slip, you have tire slip. That torque number becomes a wishy-washy number because
it's a calculated number.
Yeah, it's calculated based on roller speed. So if everything in a perfect world, that's an accurate torque number. But if you start spinning your tires, it's not an accurate number. Right. So I think if they would score it off of horsepower only, it would. I think it would still be fair. Yeah. And then you take somebody like Tony and the Duramax. The V8s generally don't make as much torque as what the inline trucks do. I think horsepower is really what matters. Yeah. But I don't know. Those are all things. The nice thing is like Chris and James and UCC, they're very open to the suggestions. They want to make this a great event. And so they always listen to competitors. They listen to our input. And if there's changes that they think would make the event better, they're willing to listen to us. Mm-hmm. But, I don't know. What do you guys think of the 2-truck rule? How did you feel on Sunday?
I had mixed feelings about that one. I think Lynn, you go first on that one. I'm just curious.
From a competitor standpoint, I like it because for one, doing that transformation going from dyno to sled pull day it's a mess. It's a hot mess, and you're trying to make a drag race truck sled pull without tearing the thing up, and then it's a lot of work to put it back together after the event. So from that whole standpoint, I loved it. But from an actual, the idea of the event, I really think it completely almost ruins it, I guess. And then the whole thing of I found myself up there who's this guy pulling for? I don't even know who's pulling,
for sure.
Right. So it takes a lot of the
heart.
It takes a lot of the heart out of it. So
Sunday you didn't feel like there was stake in the game. Right. You were just standing back to just see what happened.
Right. And it was it felt like the event was over, and it was pretty much hey, is anybody going to trip up and lose their spot? Right. It's do your job and you got your spot and we're good to go. It's kind of almost what it felt like.
Pretty much.
So I don't know. Yeah. I don't want to criticize it or whatever, but it definitely had a very different feel to it.
It makes sense. UCC did that so that they take all the fast trucks that are out in the country racing, and they're like, how can we appeal to these guys to come play at the Ultimate Call-Out Challenge? So they got a fast truck, they can come drag race, they can put their fast truck on the dyno, smack a number, and then they can hire a sled pull truck. And they were thinking they could increase their competitor list and basically make it a better show for the fans. But in reality, it didn't really attract those extra trucks. Yeah. So I know we're looking at that.
Well, and I think some of that was it was done a little bit late in the game, and it wasn't promoted super well. But I know there's been a lot of chatter in the last couple of days amongst the competitors, how can we change this? How can we make it better? Lots of suggestions thrown out there, really. So I would expect there will be some kind of a change made for next year. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but
in the next couple of weeks, there'll be a lot of stuff chitter-chattered, and I would expect some changes made this summer. And hopefully, a lot of you guys, if you're watching and you got race trucks, pay attention. You might be set up to where you guys can compete next year.
Right. Yeah. Well, and there was just some talk of maybe doing more of a street truck type challenge, and then maybe making it just a
drag race,
smaller elite deal where there's maybe just a handful of trucks, but then it's just drag racing and dyno, and maybe actually throwing in some eliminations into the drag racing as well. Because for me personally, it's one thing to go post a time on the board. It's quite another thing to have a vehicle that can actually stage in a timely manner and can leave the line and can compete against another vehicle.
Right. And it makes a big difference in your tune-up if you know you got to make another lap.
Right. Well, and I think the fans really, I mean, it's a lot better when it's, it's heads up. Like, you win or lose. It's not this just lighting up a scoreboard. So I think you could almost do it as two separate events where you get scored based on your time trial for the one, and then you get scored based on eliminations on the other. And I know that was tried, what was it, 1 year or two?
2019 they did that, I believe.
And that ended up being kind of difficult just because a lot of guys weren't used to racing, and it caused some discrepancies here and there. But I think some of that was maybe just the promoters not quite being aware of some of the rules and things as far as staging procedures and stuff. So I think all of that stuff can be worked through.
They got a lot of guys throwing their trucks together.
Right.
It comes down the last minute. I mean, a lot of these guys, we all have jobs, and it takes a lot to get a truck together. And so you show up, and you finally get the last pieces together the last minute. You show up at UCC, and you're making your test passes, and you're not ready. Just all there's to it. But we'll figure all that out. That's all stuff for to talk about once rules come out. You'll see what changes come out for next year. But either way, we're looking to make UCC better. We won't be able to have the sled pull track inside the circle track next year because NASCAR truck's going to be there the following week, and they can't have dirt in there. So they're going to be putting a sled pull track between the drag strip and the stands on the DPI side.
Yep.
So all the action will be there by the drag strip between dyno, drag race, and sled pull. That'll be cool.
I think that's a great idea. Because you do see, the stands this year had a good amount of people in them over in where the pool's been. But putting it right there in the heart, like if you have, because, on Sunday, there's not a lot of.
Bring everything together.
Yeah, and then the people that, or, the exhibitors that are still there, they can have their booths open, and, it makes it a little bit, when everything's tighter, it almost feels like it's better. There's more people around. It's just better in general.
Yeah, I didn't feel like there was that many people there this year because it was so spread out. Show and Shine had like 400 some entries.
They're huge.
And DPI, UCC, ODSS, but there was more people through the gates this weekend than there ever were at any other UCC before. So that was good, and it's good to see the internet buzz like this week. It's just people chattering, gets people excited about modifying their trucks, going out racing, and you go to an event like that, it's hard not to come back and get excited about doing something.
It is. But yeah, I think touching back on the two truck thing, I talked to probably 4 or 5 different people this week or this past weekend that didn't realize that, or were like, well, who am I going to get? Yeah. And I'm like, well, it goes to show that I feel like on the sled puller side of stuff, there's, we all three know that there's tons of, well-capable trucks that could, help or benefit somebody's team. And a lot of these guys just don't have, the majority of sled pullers don't have any idea about this event. Right. Along with the racers. And I think how to get both of those involved, but that's... Yeah.
Well, that's why
the two truck thing I do like.
If we could get a sanctioned sled pull in on Saturday night, I think that would be big because now all the sled pullers would come in and it would really get the rest of the diesel industry all in one spot. So we got a lot of things to talk about when it comes to helping Chris and James and the promotion of the Ultimate Callout Challenge. We at Firepunk are only hosting the drag race side of it, so we get our input. We get to throw our input in there. But listening to James and Chris, they really do want to make it a great event. So if you guys have suggestions, put it in the comments.
I kind of think it'd be fun to do a manufacturer's challenge where pretty much you can bring multiple vehicles, but say you're D&J, all of your vehicles have to be running a D&J motor.
So or I don't know. You could have a drag race with a D&J motor, a dyno with a D&J motor, and a sled pull.
Right. So each manufacturer picks their top trucks that they have and let's come let it all hang out.
Right.
So I don't know. I think something like that could be pretty cool alongside more of a street truck competition or something. But I don't know. For our street truck competition, since we don't like to do street drives anymore, we could all go do 30 laps on the circle track.
I mean, it's big enough. You probably could do an option course. But
yeah, I'll race Derek Rose on the circle track.
I don't think he'd take that bet. I don't think he'd take that one.
I showed up with some ragged out Dodge with the quad cab power plant in it.
Oh, he'd be living.
I'd just run him off the road.
Eat your fender.
Yeah, exactly.
No, it'd be a good time.
But
So what's next? We have. We took the final pass with the S10 this weekend, and that was something that we had not announced before. But you gotta watch the Firepunk Racing Series start. We start about where we began and where it's come to, and now it's talking about the future. And this is something that's been a hard decision for us, but we've kind of got to the point where at the S10 to where it's like, where is the next level? And the chassis is kind of a handicapped at this point to go much faster than the high 390s or low 40s on big tires. So we have kind of bit the bullet and working with Reese Brothers on building a new Pro Mod. So we're going to got to take the S10 apart now so we can get the engine out, the rear end out of it, and get it fitted for the new car. And we're hoping to debut it later this fall. And hopefully that will give us the ability to be a couple 100 pounds lighter than what the S10 is. It'll give us all the new chassis stuff that we need to really hopefully get our 60 foots down where a Pro Mod should be as sub 1.0. And if we can do that, we're really hoping to be able to long term push this into something we can go to PDRA and race in the Pro Mod class and not necessarily win, but at least make the field.
Yeah, like be very competitive. I think.
Yeah,
that's
if we can win, that'd be even better. But we're not there yet. We're not 5,000 horsepower capable yet, like some of these Pro Charger cars are, and nitrous and turbo cars. Yeah. But we've got a good platform to work with.
I mean, ultimately, the next step is going to be the short game. Like until we can get this thing to 60 foot in the 0.90 or 0.9 something.
Sub 50s, 960s.
Right. Until we can do that, and then you might as well forget about running deep into the threes. And we just keep kind of running into that, feels like a brick wall to us in that 108 range. And I'm sure there's things that could be done with the S10 to make it go faster. But it was one of those things where we're at the point where we need to either spend some money on the S10 upgrading it, or we need to move on. And it just kind of felt like it was dumb to keep upgrading and changing and whatever an old chassis. Yeah. That's not ideal. Like it's pretty close, and I'm sure in the right hand somebody could make it go faster. But at the end of the day, we're still somewhat green to this whole Pro Mod thing.
Yeah, and
it was another reason that we decided to go this route is because we're getting a lot of expertise with the new chassis build. I think the guys down at Reese Brothers are going to be able to, give us a lot of insight and just learning how to Pro Mod instead of learning how to diesel.
They know what the drive shaft curve should look like. They know what the G meter should look like, and they understand first gear ratio. So we have to run the taller rear gears because we don't have the RPM to run out the back door. So they know what gear ratio we need in the trans. So they don't have experience with diesel, but they took a small block. They have the record for the fastest small block there in 351 at 215.
I believe so, yeah.
I think it made 3,350 horsepower. So if they can do that, I feel like it's a safe bet that if we can team up with a good chassis shop like that, they can teach us what we need to know to make this thing go to the next level.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, it's going to be up to us to make the power and to control it and all that kind of stuff. But I think the chassis side of things are going to save us a year or two of headaches. And
that's what we really wanted to build this ourselves, and we have the capabilities in-house to put a chassis together. But the amount of time that it would take away from customer projects, we would pretty much have to take Lynn and Cody away from customer projects for pretty much the rest of the year to build our own chassis. And then we would still be green. And it really makes a lot more sense for us financially to keep going on our own customer projects, keep the shop rolling, and get a rolling chassis done by the Reese Brothers. And then we can have their advice once we hit race day and try to get this thing figured out as quickly as possible.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it is a next chapter. I mean, it's, I think we've all had enough discrepancies about all of it. And, I wanted to build it, or, we wanted to build it here at the shop. But, again, I mean, David Reese and them, like, you look at what they've done and,
it's phenomenal.
I mean, it is, what they are probably David Reese is the most determined man I think I've ever seen walk around at a racetrack, between riding his bike and stuff. And like, so it's going to be interesting. It's going to be a good time.
It just seemed to be a pretty natural fit because they work with Mensker almost exclusively on all of their builds. And Mensker's been heavily involved in all of our chassis stuff. So that was a really good connection for us. And you got a lot more of a personal feel from these guys versus some of the bigger shops. So we're pretty excited about that. Obviously, it'll still have its headaches and learning curves. We've got some new things we want to try, and that might take a hot minute to figure out. I don't know.
Yeah, we're trying some things outside of the box that David really wanted us to try, changing up on some transmission stuff. So we're going to give it a whirl, and we will see how that goes.
Yeah.
So, but before we wrap it up, I want to talk a little bit about the S10 and how Pro Mod racing went this weekend. Because really, in a weekend like this, we're so busy between Justin's truck and helping Robbie Garcia, which was another customer that we help with UCC, and then the ODSS competitors coming in. It seems like our truck almost takes a back seat on a weekend like this because it's like an afterthought. Oh, yeah, we got to go run the S10. Let me quick throw a tune in it.
Yeah.
But we did, we struggled the first two passes.
Yeah.
Shook the tires.
Well, coming from Wagler, going to Indy, like we had Ralph at both tracks doing prep, but Indy's just inherently a better surface. And we showed up to a pretty tight track and fought tire shake. I think it was the first two hits that we had to abort because of tire shake. So we had to do that thing that you feel so backwards when you do tire shake, and we had to give it more power on the launch to get the tires spinning.
Right.
And then that seemed to take care of it for most of the weekend. But then, of course, in the finals, when the sun went down, it came back to bite us in the shorts again. So we should have probably put another 50 on our RPM in the hit. So kind of an up and down weekend with the S10, but all in all, it was, it made it through the weekend.
We made it 420 passes.
Yeah, I think something like that.
The best of 422 at 182.
So it was just to the point where we could have maybe tried to lean into it a little bit more, but then we decided to sit out the last qualifier on Saturday because it was crazy.
Right.
We were just doing 100 things, and we'd already made, 5 hits at the track, and we're qualified number 1, so we didn't quite see any need to keep, beating on it and trying to do anything crazy. But then it was also good. We had a total of, I think, 8 entries in Pro Mod. Had some, a couple of different trucks. Brett Deutsch doesn't race with us a whole lot. It's good to have him there.
It's a beautiful truck.
Right. Really we had Bernie.
Robert Berry.
Robert Berry jump in with Bernie, which he was outclassed, but it was a kind of jump in where you can get in at that point. He had done licensing passes on Friday. So, it was pretty good. Ben Shaddy had a good weekend until he didn't, I guess. But they had made some chassis changes between Waglers and now, did some front end work, and that really seemed to pay off. They really came off the trailer and went 427.
Yep.
And that's a personal best for them. So
then you ran a 424. 24 against us Friday night.
Yep.
Friday night qualifying, we decided to just line up the S10 with Ben Shaddy, just kind of as a fun thing, and I'm glad we did because he ended up breaking, and that was the last weekend with the S10. Right. Love a side-by-side race. We won a 428, and Ben beat us with a 424.
Yeah.
And that was, hear those two vehicles side-by-side running 420s makes wonderful Sweet Cummins noises.
Yeah, it definitely does.
The lights especially, it's always fun
but
too.
We couldn't have let Ben have number 1 qualifier. A little bit more and then get that 22 and
had to get him in the morning. Got one last oil bath out of the S10 over the weekend. We had that was nice christening of saying goodbye to her.
Rocker bolts that weren't holding very well, and it was squirting oil out. And
Pro Mod things.
Luckily, we have belly pans, because if it wasn't for belly pans, we'd had oil on the track.
So.
Yeah, I don't think we can emphasize enough, just for one thing, is if you are racing a pro class of any sort,
if you could put belly pans on your vehicle, are wonderful.
A belly pan or an engine diaper just does worlds. Even no prep racers, we see at Magnolia. We waited 3.5 hours for one of our test day with Justin, all because of no belly pans.
They weren't even fast cars. But
no,
you put fresh oil down over a whole track.
Wrecks the track
all day to clean it up.
A belly pan can be a little bit interesting on a 4-wheel drive, but I would still argue that a belly pan is going to catch a lot more than what an engine diaper will. We've had some pretty big oil messes.
Ziegler's one of the test days, we had the regulator come out of the Aviate. This is something that how it comes out of the box from Aviate. It vibrated out and literally dumped oil. There was 2 inches of oil
Yeah.
In the pretty much all the oil, pretty much as soon as the low pressure light came off, is when Justin shut it off. So it had pumped all the oil out of the pan, and it was all in the belly pan. Yeah. And there wasn't a drop on the whole length of the track.
No.
Well, there was at the end when it turned out.
When it turned and it splashed up against the edge.
In the shutdown, when he turned.
We kept it to a 10-foot mess instead of a 300, 500-foot mess. So it's a big difference.
Belly pans are a real thorn in the flesh to make. But if you can figure out a way to get a belly pan on your truck,
they're really pretty inexpensive if you can do some fab work. So,
that's
so much for our belly pan commercial,
right?
But
yeah, it's hard to bring that up. But
seeing the Stainless crew come out with that car, that was a lot of fun.
Awesome.
They had not made any licks at the track. They had a lot of we'll just say new car gremlin weekend at Wowlers the weekend before. They were in the pits still getting ready to go to the starting line and had a nitrous line blow off and took an oil line out in the process. So that was a big mess that they had to clean up before they even did that. And then they get to the burnout box after they get all of that fixed. And then they had an injector hang. So they never even got to make any passes. So they had injectors shipped to the track on Thursday, I believe it was. And were able to get it together in time to, do qualifying. And then, baby steps, like they started out with a couple of short hits and kind of walked up on it.
They walked up fast.
They got a 440,
447
right?
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And had a 107 60 foot in there somewhere.
Yeah, that's good.
So
like I said, like Ben's car, Johnny's car, they're gonna be boogieing. So that Duster is gonna be at high time.
Yeah.
We didn't want to wait till we were getting our butts beat by him before we bring something that could play with him. Because if you're 300 pounds heavier than the rest of the guys in your class, you're probably going to lose.
Yeah.
But it was pretty cool seeing those little baby flames coming out of those
it was cool.
the four Zoomies. So that was the exhaust Cody had built here a while ago, and it really looked cool.
Yeah, Stephen learned that you don't stand
by him.
Don't stand by him for a burnout. It'll knock your hat and your headset off.
Yeah.
He got whacked with them. It was funny.
No, I don't know. It was a good weekend of racing. Was there anything else in any of the other? Tony Burkhart, Tyler Burkhart, they finally got their 4-second pass. They've been
496
chasing it for a year. Last year at UCC, they went 503 or something like that.
502, I think. Yeah.
So they were right there, and it's almost like there's that barrier, literally.
Yeah,
it is. We fought it. You know how long we fought it. It was.
So they finally got over that hump, and they were pretty excited about that. So it was good to see that.
And then when they tried to put a little more on it, he tried to drive over the tree.
Right.
I did see that.
They made for a good picture.
The Fords had a good weekend. Nathaniel DeLong.
Yeah.
If he'd have done that pass a year ago, he would have had like the all-time four-wheel drive record. But now Derek kind of made that light.
Derek buried that one.
Derek buried that one pretty hard.
Yeah.
But still,
they went 474 with a four-wheel drive with a 6.4.
Right.
It's not Pro Street record, but they run it in the Pro Mod class. But that's getting it done. That truck, all weekend, 480s, 481. And they had that one 474 pass.
And I'm told that bottom end's been in that truck for a pretty long time. The heads have been off and some stuff.
It runs really, really good.
Yeah. So Nathaniel's definitely got that thing lined out and keeps chipping away at it.
For sure.
So that was good. And then watching Austin Denny and Charlie Fish going back and forth.
Taking the 6-liter record back and forth. Yep.
I think Charlie Fish ended up at a 5:39. I think was the last I heard for the weekend.
I watched those guys race, and the only thing I can tell by watching them is they're not using enough nitrous.
I was going to say the exact same thing.
Charlie's they're definitely not using enough nitrous because when your nitrous bottle's doing swirlies on the racetrack,
and the amount of smoke that Denny has, pull some fuel out of it, call me. I will get your nitrous tune up. You will go faster, I promise.
If I
can see smoke, you're not using enough nitrous.
Well, if I can't see the scoreboards at the end, then you're not using enough nitrous.
Exactly. I don't know anything about 6 liters, but I know that Denny doesn't have enough nitrous in his truck.
Good stuff. So
might not have a bottom end, but he'll go fast until he doesn't.
Okay, that is fact.
Yeah. But no, Derek Rose said that his nitrous wasn't working right on Friday. I think he's making it.
It's probably the Motec's fault.
Yeah, he runs 470s on it. Tyler's like, man, this kit's hanging up. And I'm like, easy, buddy. We know. It's fine. But
that's still, that was a Pro Street record.
It was, yeah. No, I guess, that was that weight,
too. That's at 4,400 pounds, so that is a Pro Street record. And look at where Pro Street has come. We were the first Pro Street truck in the 4s back in 2018 with a 497. That was when it was at 4,500 pounds. Now it got moved down to 4,400 pounds. So they got at 100 pounds and then talk.
Yeah.
but no, really, though, to run to 490s to 473, people don't know. From the outside, non-racer world, you don't think that that's a big.
Well, and I think the big difference from going 5.0s to going 470s, in my opinion, that's all due to the Turbo 400 and the standalone ECU.
Yep.
Well, look at like starting to understand. I mean, we understand as an industry as a whole, we understand a lot more about how to race than we did 4 years ago.
Right.
Look at the amount of trucks, even in the ET and index classes, that have staging limiters. That used to just, it's all just about foot brake kind of stuff. You're starting to see reaction times getting a lot better because of that kind of stuff. You're starting to be a lot more consistent on times. Like the 590 class, I think a 590 with a 3 was a number 3 qualifier or something crazy like that. I mean,
nuts. Yeah.
So, I mean, it's definitely, it's coming around. Takes a while for us diesel dummies to figure it out sometimes, but we'll get there.
Yeah.
So, all in all, it was a really good weekend. If you did something cool there this weekend and we didn't mention you, it wasn't because that we don't like you. It's just because there was a lot of cool stuff that happened.
I come home from a weekend like that, and I feel great. Like not as far as I feel great as far as the culture that's set at the racetrack is everybody wants to win, but man, outside of the staging lanes, everybody really comes together and helps each other out, and they're having a good time. I mean, it's really. I
mean, for me, it makes probably a couple of the mental images that are going to be in my head for a long time has nothing to do with the racing. It's like I just remember Saturday night walking back to the pits after the winter circle and just seeing our whole tire pits just swimming with people, smoke coming from the tent because of the food being cooked, and everybody's enjoying food and having a good time. So.
That's what it's all about.
We value the friendships and the people that come around. I don't know. It's worth every dime we spend on food just to have people hang out and have a good time. So we really do enjoy having you guys around and telling stories and having a good time. So it's kind of what it's all about building a race family. So we do appreciate each and every one of you guys and had an awesome weekend. So I don't think we've even once mentioned Charlie's name, but Charlie Krillman came out and cooked for us again this weekend. Thanks a lot to him and Jim and anybody else that helped. I think I saw Joe Virgilio jump in there Saturday night, pulling that pig apart. Phil Hooker was helping. Yep. So thanks a lot to everybody that had a part in putting this weekend together. There was a lot of folks from our shop and friends from local that jump in and volunteered to help make sure everything goes right this weekend. So hopefully we were able to get everybody situated and make it as good of a weekend as possible. But all in all, awesome time, and we can't wait to do it again next year. So
you won't see us racing the Pro Mod this summer, but we will still be at Rocky Top and Shide. So come out. We're going to have a good time. I'll be racing the Quad Cab in 670. That's why I'm racing the Quad Cab in 670. Because I figured if we're not racing the S10 this summer, be my chance to get back in the Quad Cab and do some 670 racing. And
get some more red lights in.
Yeah. Speaking of red lights, I think he was about to get a really big hit on Saturday because the last round of time trials, he got a 000 on the reaction time. Then the first 2 rounds, you went 003 both rounds. Yep. On reaction time. And
it screwed me because I had to go from Justin's winning the dyno, jump on the scooter and haul butt to the staging lanes and jump in the truck. My spidey senses were about this high. So yellow light go, 014 red.
Hey, Lars got his first, the last pass at the S10, yep. Lars got his first red light in competition. Really? That was his first red light competition.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And I'm like, you know what?
Me, Lynn, Larson, and Landon all lost on red lights this weekend.
That's crazy. Well, I saw Brett Markham's time slip in his final. He went 001.
001. I saw
like that. Yeah, and then Johnny went 000 perfect against us. Which some of that may have been going off of Larson's little quick reaction. I don't know.
Yeah,
but either which, it's got a 000. Like
right, it's pretty cool taking the win with a 000 reaction.
But that's what I mean. that tells you how hard guys are trying. I mean, if you're not trying to get your reaction times better, if you're not getting a red light every now and then, you're probably not trying hard enough.
Well, and especially in the index and ET classes, like, man, so many of these races are won and lost on the tree.
Well, I knew that the quad cab wasn't running the number. I wasn't getting my 60 foot. I ran a 684, but because of my 003 reaction time, I still won by a truck length because of reaction time. So if you can bang a reaction time, you have a lot more grace at the finish line in an index class.
Do you think some of that not being able to run the number had to do with you going a little bit deep? Like that could affect your... No,
it had more to do with I had been playing with my boost limited fueling map to try to get the truck to launch smoke free. And I had got it completely clean, but then my 60 foot was like a 177. So now I was like into eliminations, kept bumping it up, and by the time I got to eliminations, I didn't dare touch it because I didn't want to make a tune change. And all of a sudden, my 60 foot come back and around 660. So I'll figure that out and come back and do better. I was a little distracted that way. So I'll do better next time.
Definitely, the multitasking was on high for you this weekend. Your scooter and your laptop bag came in handy quite a bit. It was, zooming all over the place and tuning things here and there. But anyhow, I think we're going to wrap it up for today. And we will talk to you guys on the next episode of Firepunk Friday.
Take care, guys.